Tejarah Talks is basically the new old project. Basically, it came from previous efforts of ITHRA at the time, several years ago, where the authority back then responsible for promotion of investment had started engaging both internal and external stakeholders in Oman on various topical issues, forward-looking basically. What do we see? What are the key trends around the world? What is happening? And experts are invited to have a discussion basically on their thoughts, but paying more attention to Oman and what's happening in terms of what was called back then inside stories. After 2020, that morphed into the Tejarah Talks, where again the same emphasis is still there, promoting investment into Oman through looking at what is really happening on the ground and putting out examples of what startups are doing, what established businesses are doing, how business practices and investment practices are evolving in Oman, in such a way as to kind of look forward to create the awareness, the preparedness for businesses in Oman and those coming into Oman, that this business environment is both welcoming and there are very exciting things happening that are noteworthy, but also to encourage others to network through these events and kind of come and ask, how did you get that done? How did you succeed, for example, in exporting to a specific market? How did you green your processes? How do millennials look at the workplace today? What kind of work culture are we looking at? So these are issues that kind of weave around the business environment and the investment environment in Oman. And the ultimate goal was to really showcase what Oman is capable of and to obviously send a message to the outside world that you're welcome to Oman. This is what we're doing. It's exciting. Do come and invest.
So you mentioned a couple of the topics that you cover in Tejarah Talks. I think you've done 6 to 7 different sessions so far.
Correct.
Since the beginning of the year.
We've kind of had the Champions League kind of year this year with so many different sort of sessions. It's quite intense. The team has been fantastic. I've been moderating these sessions myself, but involved in sort of engaging the panelists once the panelists have been settled and agreed to join us. It's the team that brings those panelists together, puts up all the notes, so kudos to them.
Right.
And preparing obviously the logistics and the location and the PR as well. And those 5 to 6 sessions that we've done today as part of the bigger program focused on various issues. We looked at things like manufacturing and how manufacturing is changing in Oman, especially during the pandemic, because that's been a bit of a lull for the world for the last couple of years. And then we've looked at export markets, how to crack the export market. We've looked at work culture, how COVID has changed that. And there was specific emphasis on Gen Zs and millennials and how they are interacting with all these changes, as well as looking at sustainability and the green transition. And ultimately, we were looking at Omani companies and startups and businesses in various sectors and how they are interacting and how is this business environment evolving with changes in regulation, updates, and the economic challenges that we've seen through the last few years as well. Very interesting stories. I've learned a lot from some of these speakers.
I would love to know what some of the things that you've learned in the process, and who are some of these notable speakers that at least that you remember, because I'm sure every speaker would resonate to a different person depending on what they're into and what their interests are.
All right, so I should warn you, I'm very bad with remembering names.
Me too. It's okay.
But more recently, the ones we've been talking to is Talal Hassan from 44.01, which is a carbon capture or sequestering company. It's a startup, and it recently collaborated with certain companies in the UK and won a prize for $1 million and have managed to capture carbon in rock form and inject it into specific rock formations in Oman, which are unique to our geography and
Could you explain to me why?
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Obviously, you're well aware that climate change is an accelerating concern. And ultimately, the Paris Agreement had put some key goals on reducing emissions. The problem with reducing emissions is it takes very strict sort of processes and actions. And more recently, we've seen Oman has announced its net zero. His Majesty recently sort of blessed the 2050 target for Oman to offset our emissions in carbon dioxide, obviously. Now, what you do with carbon capture, as far as I understand it, is you're taking existing and new carbon emissions, captured through various methods, either directly from air or from the source. Say you have a plant and this plant burns fossil fuels and that part of your emissions is CO2. That is either captured at source or captured from the air at some other location. That is then transported in some form or another into the location where you inject it into the ground. And that requires specific type of rocks that are available in that location, which Oman has abundance of it. I think it's some type of lime rock, if I'm not mistaken. Once you've infused that into that, and it's well underground, it's not at the surface.
Okay.
It infuses, and that rock absorbs the CO2. So you're effectively storing that CO2, which is a greenhouse gas, one of the key greenhouse gases. That technology is still, it's available, it's used around the world, but it's being applied in Oman at a gradual stage. And the idea for this company is to scale it up. Now, the same company also came up with a biodiesel solution in Oman, taking used cooking oil and in some way or the other processing it, and it's introduced in a blend of diesel, where the diesel itself now is combination of this biofuel and diesel. So you're reducing the percentage. And if I'm not mistaken, I've spoken to one of the those who are working on the project, a company called Waqood, and it is, I believe, a 90% reduction in the full value chain of emissions, from the collection to the processing to the delivery of the fuel, in the emissions caused from, picking the oil up from wherever you get it from until you get to that. Now, these are small efforts, but ones that will have important impact as we think of how we move towards net zero in 2050, and greening our processes, but also looking at solutions that are viable. Other people we've spoken to, people who come from Sir Ray Charles, I believe, or Charles Ray. I always get
Sir Charles Shaw.
Shaw, yes. I'm thinking of the artist, aren't I?
Yeah.
Right. Now, Sir Charles has been instrumental in bringing UK companies into Oman and setting them up. A company, I believe, is called Bondoni, I think it is.
Yes, Bondoni.
And their setup basically is to bring investors in and set them up in Oman. And it is very exciting to see the sort of drive to make Oman a destination for those UK investments.
Right.
And he's had some very interesting insights in the work culture during the pandemic and obviously post-pandemic, where we were talking about some of those changes.
He was joined by Shada Al-Maskari, I believe, on that session.
Correct.
Yeah.
And she works heavily in HR consultancy, and she's brought in her insights, and also with some of the efforts she's been working with women empowerment and bringing more attention to that topic as well. We've had Tejarah Al Said as well with us from Yozu. I think it's called Yozu Agriculture, where they work on organic farming. And him and his brothers have been developing solutions where they're presenting in Oman quality gourmet products at reasonable prices, which are also organic.
Missed that one.
Yeah. So I've asked him, where do we find it? And he said you can find it anywhere, from the big hypermarkets to some of the specialty ones as well. And they're very key to keep the seasonality going as well. So they're not all about just volume and different types, but they're very specific about their greens and others, and that kind of value.
I want to ask you, if you don't mind, because I've attended a few of these sessions. Now, the topics, they vary. There's a wide range of topics that all relate to the economy in one way or another, and in business and leadership. I wonder how you prepare for these, because whenever I attend these sessions, it doesn't seem like you're merely a presenter asking a set of questions. Well, I'm sure there is you've prepared questions, but how do you go about being well versed in these topics and understanding these topics? Is there anyone that is particularly challenged for you to wrap your head around? Because I'm thinking about it from my perspective. I won't understand all of this,
You're absolutely right. And I am not well versed in any of those topics. I'm economist by training, and professor as well in university, as well as, I do a lot of other things. But I'm very blessed, lillahi alhamd, to be able to engage in so many different things on the personal and professional level, where I'm constantly learning. And if anything, Tejarah Talks has been a learning platform for me. Again, I would like to give credit to the team from the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Investment Promotion. They are doing much of the setup. But my pushback has always been, if I'm going to moderate these sessions, then I would like to design them with such a way that it works well with myself and the panelists. Absolutely. So we run through a preparation session where some of those ideas by the ministry's team is put out, and those ideas are then discussed, and then we see what every person is comfortable with. In that way, in any discussion panel, Tejarah Talks, or any other discussion, you have to be prepared. You have to be comfortable that your panelists they never feel awkward, never feel misunderstood or misrepresented in any way, because usually people either come from representing their organizations in certain times, but they come with their personal opinions. So we're always aware this is not a platform for finger pointing. This is not a platform for criticism. We want people to be critical about, the general flow and kind of why aren't we doing enough here or not. But we want to inform them that this is what's happening on the ground. Are you aware that this is what's happening on the ground? And this push, say, for example, green hydrogen, we've had discussions about it in the last session with some very interesting people that come from the Oman Hydrogen Center, that come from companies that consult in this area.
Hydrogen Development Oman?
I think it's called Hydrogen Oman right now, if I'm not mistaken. Because the key role, Dr. Firas Al-Abdouani is one of the people also. Is fantastic to talk to him, as always. So he started in OQ Renewables with the team there. And then now he's in Hydrogen Oman, which is working on the development aspect. They're not going to be producing. They're not going to be the ones responsible. It's not a PDO or an MDO kind of scenario, but they're going to be the key stakeholder engagement tool that under the Energy Development Oman company that is going to be concerned with hydrogen. Now, that sort of the insights that Dr. Firas brings in, or Mark Gleeson, I always get his name wrong, so I always apologize.
He has a very Dutch last name, which is hard for us to pronounce.
And I've spoken to Mark before. He used to be the CEO of Sahar Port, and now he's working in a consortium between an Omani company, I think it was the Hind Bahwan Group and another Copenhagen Institute.
Infrastructure.
Something of the sort that we were talking about. And he brings in the table a completely different perspective today. So it was exciting to be able to talk to him then. And recently we've had a chat with him as well. And you can see the perspective of what's been brought on the table.
I think I want to make that connection to the audience now.
Sure.
So these sessions have been taking place for throughout this year. Unfortunately, though, if you missed it, you missed it, right? But you guys are working on something that would hopefully reach a much wider audience. And do you mind telling us what that is?
Sure. Well, you're involved in it, Abdullah.
A little bit, yes.
So the pace of these sessions this year has been particularly fast. Usually what happened in the past with similar sessions was there were key reviews and reports that come out. Basically, what has happened in the session. Arguably, we've been a bit lacking on the video side of things and putting out the recordings because Twitter was the main platform where this was broadcasted. That's about to change because Tejarah Talk itself, it now has its own accounts on various social media outlets. That's kind of the transformation of Tejarah Talks to kind of bring itself to the 21st century, if you like.
Very quickly,
yes. We've missed out the first 2 decades, but we're there. So that element now is going to utilize whatever is available to us in outlets, and one of the outlets is going to be podcasts. I can't talk in specific details until the actual podcasts are out, but the idea now is to engage listeners and viewers as well. This is a visual one as we are doing it as well. Right?
I think we can say that. It's going to be a visual podcast where all of these incredible people, some of these incredible people that Seyyid Adham spoke about, we'll actually finally be able to hear them, even if we missed the sessions.
Absolutely. And what we look for in these podcasts is to highlight some of the key issues in such a way as not to repeat ourselves, but to really, bring those issues back again to people's mind. And whether it's the green transition or the work culture or, the Gen Z kind of push towards what's next for them and what's upcoming. And the idea of these podcasts is to complement the sessions themselves and in a way to transform the way we think about those discussions, keep them ongoing. And obviously the podcasts are more intimate in those discussions. There's never enough time to ask all the questions. And what I have been pleased with, lillahi alhamd, is we've seen consistent number of people come to the sessions where the interest, and they're repeat offenders, if you like. I was pleasantly surprised when some of our students from SQU made an effort to attend some of those sessions. You know, these are evening sessions. Once you've had a long day at university,
you're done. You're done.
No reason.
But it's midweek.
It's totally. I don't understand why it's always on a Wednesday, but arguably Mondays would be better. You know, you still have that energy. But having said that, we've always been lucky that the attention is there. We need to reach a wider audience, and the podcasts are going to be, I think, a stepping stone for this. But again, one could arguably say podcasts are forever, right? Once they're out there, they're out there. And I think that is very critical. But the other thing is, it is engaging our panelists in more deeper discussions, kind of giving them the opportunity to reflect on their experiences. Again, this is all about stories in Oman, that did you know kind of thing. And we need to put relevance. We hear a lot from the outside world. These podcasts and the sessions are going to allow people always to kind of dive deeper into. The other thing we're hoping that will come out before soon, inshallah, are sort of detailed discussion reports on what's been discussed, highlighting key issues. And those are kind of for those who love to read and get or delve deeper. So they're in the pipeline, as far as I'm told. I'm not involved in that process, obviously. But I look forward to seeing that, the output of the podcasts as well as the information sessions.
I'm curious for you on a personal level. What do you hope would come out of this? What's the ideal outcome?
Right. The ideal outcome is to have that aha moment, right? For you to have a big question mark sitting right on top of your masar thinking, hang on, I didn't know that was an issue. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, we did a session on the silver economy.
What's that?
All right. So I asked the same question. What's going on here? And, having read, the layman, it's old people's economy.
Okay.
Right. That was the impression. Old people, they're retired. They just need health care, full stop. If you provide that, you're fine. So much of that attention was there. But I was like, hang on, that's not going to work, because people, as they come closer to a retirement age, whatever that age is in whichever country, they want to look for engagement, both economic and social and interactive in society. These people generally can spend more, or these people generally have already fulfilled. If they've had kids, they've paid for their school fees and university fees. They're no longer committed or grounded necessarily with the typical things that middle age and younger people are grounded with, or not. So the silver economy became kind of a tag for the opportunities that present themselves for that generation, which is, say, just arguably above 60 or 70 or 80. All right. And where do the opportunities come from? It could be travel. It could be health lifestyle, rather than just thinking healthcare lifestyle. It could be, catering for their needs in terms of their tastes, their needs and their wants. This could range from anything from consumer products specifically designed for that group age. If we're going to talk generations, we're talking, like the baby boomers / and what comes after.
Sure.
If one were to use that. So these kind of, in our societies, that is not even on the radar.
It's all young people.
Exactly. But that is a big mistake, because the 40-year-olds and the 50-year-olds, by 2040, those guys, bihawlillah, are going to be 60 and 70 years old. And if they were not preparing society for that, this is not about taking care of the elderly and having elderly homes. No. It's about them living a fulfilled life the way they want it, not the way society wishes. So having that discussion, that was an interesting panel, because we had a lady from Ireland, basically running an institute that looks into all of these issues, come through. Her name, unfortunately, does not come to mind at the moment, but that was an interesting panel because it was a one-to-one. So we had a deep dive into this silver economy. What does it mean? And why should we, and I asked, why should it matter to us? We're a young nation, but if we're not prepared for those eventualities, then we miss out. We are not taking it. Take it recently. Many people retired after 30-year service
Right.
In the public sector. Now, those people effectively are moving into that silver economy. They're looking for opportunities. Maybe they want to start up a very small business, or maybe they want to engage themselves in a side hustle, if you like, or no longer a side hustle, it'll be the main hustle. But again, we ask the questions, are we preparing our society for that? Are businesses prepared? Are startups prepared for that?
Why do you use this as an example?
This is some of the things that are so far reaching ahead of us that it's not on society's radar. Let's talk green transition.
Right.
Right. It's nice to talk about, but many of us don't register with it. You start your car in the morning, you complain at the cost of fuel and the traffic and whatever, but we never think that while we're on traffic, we are emitters, right? When we buy our water bottles, we are, eventually going to create refuse. We talk circular economy. What are our choices? I was at an event yesterday for social marketing where students were competing on creating campaigns with a social marketing perspective. So not just simply campaign with posters, but
we're doing something good for society.
Structured way.
Yeah.
Right from the start, from planning it to executing it and then following through. And, I was asked, what is the one thing what one behavior you'd like to change, at least? And the first thing that came to my mind is consumer activism. And I asked the question, why aren't we as consumers demanding better products that are better suited for our health and the environment? Right? We just take, some things are more difficult to change. For example, the plastic bottle.
Right.
Alternatives, we don't have water filling stations. I can take my water bottle and fill it up.
Right.
That's a big ask right now. It can be changed, though.
So you mean like consumers who care about whether the product, say, is ethically sourced, for example?
That's one, but closer to home, packaging.
Okay.
Right? How many products do you buy on a regular basis that's over-packaged? Right? Why is it we accept to buy electronics without a charger plug? For example. Because if, say, a product comes with its own charger plug and wire, I don't need to go to a third party.
Right.
Right? That means less waste and less demand that those guys, market demand and supply, would say, what? If no one needs immediately, I'll need a replacement wire. I don't need to buy a wire. The packaging, food packaging sometimes, it's overdone.
Way overdone.
Right? And
I've had boxes this big with a little burger this small inside.
Exactly. Exactly. And then arguably, we don't ask those questions. We don't demand, I'll give you another example. How many times do we order on food deliveries for something worth less than the delivery of the order, the petrol and the cost of delivery? I want a cup of coffee. Make it at home.
Right.
Right? I would love that macchiato/Spanish latte from XYZ. That's all nice. But wait a minute, before you click on that button, it's become so easy for us to create waste and emissions. We don't need to be fanatical about it, but taking very small steps into changing, whether you need to go for that drive, whether you need to change, the way we as consumers change our behavior is by selecting what is suitable and what we think is. Sometimes we don't have alternatives, then we need to make our voice heard. Up to today, we still get people picking up, say, a very small piece of chocolate and hand it in a plastic bag.
It's true.
And then you get asked, do you need a plastic bag? After you've handed me the plastic. Can I give you the plastic bag back?
I feel like this is such a tiny psychological thing that would make a big difference. Before you hand the customer a plastic bag, just ask them if they want it. Most people will say, no, I'm okay. But once you're handed the plastic bag, you'll take it.
Right. And the same with receipts, right? Receipts are critically important. But have you seen the receipts and the pages and pages of receipt that tell you? They're fantastic, but we have alternatives, right? How do we manage that process over time that we don't need to? You buy something for £1, the paper that you use just to print your receipts, 3-4 pages. Unnecessary.
I guess the question is then, how do we get people to care? How do we get customers to care?
I'm not a behavioral scientist, but I always understand from what I read or hear, there are ways to nudge people. And those who are in the, the behavioral economics and the social marketing and others would select nudges that make the behavior change easier. First of all, awareness about it, as far as I understand, and then making that change much easier. We buy certain capsules for coffee, right? And those are recyclable, made from aluminium. Now, we're a bit lazy to deliver it to where it needs to be because it's not that convenient. No one says, I will pick up those capsules from you.
No.
Alternatively, because there's a boom in this coffee business, there are those who make it from plastic. We go and buy the plastic. I personally, unfortunately, buy the plastic because it's closer to home. It's on my way. It's being sold. And I hang on, that's not going to be recyclable. That's for sure not going to be recyclable, right? So I like the convenience of having a quick cup of coffee at home, but at the same time, my behavior isn't really aligned with where I should be, arguably, because it's more difficult for me.
It is. It's less convenient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk to behavioralists and behavioral scientists, they will tell you that there are certain steps to start from the awareness to giving tools and ways to make it. We always make it sound difficult to create certain change that will have impact, or the impact is so small we don't care, as much. And those are matters of perception, but I'll leave that to the experts, obviously.